Blood's everywhere. Isuku's body's on the ground. He's been beaten for the 5th time today. His parents angry and disgusted with him. They hate him for, not saving somebody. Somebody that was important to them. Deku's younger sister. She was killed in a villain attack. And Deku, he was there. He witnessed the whole thing, but he couldn't stop her from, being murdered. She was taken hostage and, the people didn't really need her anymore, so they killed her once they got free. And Deku's parents resent him for not doing anything. She had a bright future ahead of her. She was going to be possibly the #1 hero. She could have taken over, his father's spot as, the #1 or #3 hero. But she's dead now. And Deku is powerless to do anything about it. But this doesn't justify the fact that his parents were beating him. And it wasn't only that. Bakugo. At school, Deku, he liked a girl. Her name was... why not Momo? Her name was Momo. And he really enjoyed her company. Every time he saw her, his day brightened. His stomach filled with butterflies. And he wanted to tell her so badly that he loved her. Loved her with everything in his heart. But he couldn't. He didn't know how. Deku, he didn't know how to express love. Saying that, he was never taught how to. And due to this, Deku missed his chance. And after Deku's brutal, bloody beating, he was forced to go to school. He wears a mask so that people don't see the cuts that are all around his mouth from glass that his parents have forced him to eat. And so he wears, the mask you see on the screen. And when Deku would walk into class 1A, he'd see the girl. She'd be kissing Bakugo. He told Bakugo that he liked her. He wanted Bakugo's help to get her. And this is what Bakugo does. He plans to make my life a living hell. He's been doing it for so many years. Yeah. How could I trust a bastard like that? I bet that's what you're thinking. Well, to be honest, I don't know myself. But I just thought, for the faintest second, that if he had any goodness in his heart, he'd help me. But I see I was wrong. Deku would start to tear up as he walked over to Momo. Bakugo had a smile on his face. So did Momo. As Momo would see Deku crying, and she would immediately run over to him and ask him what's wrong. He'd say, "You and Bakugo, That's what's wrong. What are you talking about, Izuku? Well, he's your boyfriend, isn't he? Yeah. We just made it official. His Deku's heart would break. His eyes would go dead. He'd say, "So he didn't tell you?" Tell me what? What are you talking about, Izuku? Come on, just spit it out. As Deku would say, I, 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 I love you. As Momo, she wouldn't know how to react to this. But the first word she said would be, well, one of her biggest mistakes that, well, she could have made at this time. She'd have said, "You love me? Wait, aren't you a loner?" Is Deku hearing this? He thought to himself, "Yeah, I am. I am a loner. Meaning I never had a chance with you in the first place. What the fuck? What was I thinking?" As tears would begin to stream down Deku's face, Bakugo would walk up and he'd look at Momo as he'd kiss her, passionately, tongue and all, right in front of Deku. As Deku would see this, his eyes, they would turn dark black. Like there's no light in Deku's eyes anymore. He's senseless. And everybody in the classroom, they see this. And they're cheering on Bakugo. And Aizawa, well, he's not in the classroom right now, so he can't tell everybody to settle down. But Deku, he would just back away. He'd take his seat, put his head on his desk. Well, he'd just sit there, biting his tongue, over and over again, until he got tired of the bleeding. And eventually he went to the nurse and said he was sick. She let him go home. Deku would have contemplated going home or not, saying that, well, his parents would have beaten the shit out of him. And by this point, I got something that'll really fuck Deku over. Yeah. I do. Yeah, I do. But, yeah. Deku would, well, he would walk under the bridge as usual and he'd be caught in the sludge villain. Deku would be suffocating and, well, nobody was there to help him. Until a few heroes showed up, but they just sat there. Deku's body was being devoured. They sat and watched, saying they didn't have the right quirks, so they couldn't do anything. They might as well have just walked away. Deku thought this to himself as he was fighting, struggling, trying not to die. He was crying even harder. Why did God make his life such a fucking mess? Why is this world a disappointment? As Deku's body would be completely devoured by the sludge villain and then spit out. And the sludge villain would say, "Ew, I don't want that meat shield." Deku would begin gasping. Well, he nearly died. But thanks to his foul taste, I guess, well, he has another chance at life. And so Deku would struggle to his feet as the sludge villain would try to get away, but All Might would show up. saying, "United States of Smash," as he'd punched the Sludge villain, sending it into a wall. His All Might would see Izuku as he'd say, "Oh, young Izuku, how are you doing?" His Deku would put on a fake smile as he'd say, "Oh, I'm doing great, All Might. It's nice to see you." His All Might would smile and say, "Well, I'll see you at school tomorrow. Wait, why aren't you at school?" "Oh, I'm kinda sick. I was going home, but I was attacked by the Sludge villain." "Oh, well, good thing I'm here." As All Might would, well, thumbs up Izuku and jump off. Oh no, he'd bottle up the Sludge villain, give it to the heroes, then jump off, seeing that, well, his time limit was about to run out. And, yeah. Deku, well, after being attacked by the Sludge villain, would make it to his house. His parents, they would be waiting on him. His father, Hiyashi, he had a bat with barbed wire all over it. And his mother had a crowbar. So once Deku dropped his bag, he instantly went to a corner, trying to protect himself. But this was of no use at all. Deku was beaten mercilessly. His face covered in scars. He'd, well, lose multiple teeth. Almost every bone in his body broken. As he'd just sit there in agony. In realization of something. As Deku's bones would start to snap back into place. As he'd say, I'm gonna change this. I swear it. As Deku would realize that, well, he may now have the power to change this. Deku might have the power to change his fate. Seeing that, well, he might just have a quirk. But before he can go on, Deku would black out completely. His head hitting the floor after, well, the next hit from a crowbar. And once Deku, well, awoke, he wasn't in the outside world. He was in a void of sorts. A state between life and death. And Deku, he saw a key. It was made of bones. Complete bones. As Deku would say, what is this? And yeah, I'll say Deku did have a quirk, but it was absolutely useless. It was ass. His quirk was ass before. But yeah, his quirk was pretty bad. I'll say it was something like nah, because that would be overpowered. Like, yeah, that would be pretty overpowered. I'll say he could blow mediocre gusts of wind from his mouth. Which is why his parents hate him, because he could have used that power to save his sister, but that doesn't matter now. So, yeah. Deku would be trying to open the door as, well, he would open the door that was placed in front of him, and he'd see two, well, gassy balls. Pause. Two balls of gas. That's how I should have said that. One of them was red and the other was white. Deku went up and he touched both of them. He wanted to know what would happen. And when he touched them, his body, it started to wilt away. His eyes, they would turn red. Deku's hair would go completely black. And he'd gain all of these tattoos around his body, signifying as, well, bones. And, well, at the end of, well, Deku's excruciating, painful process of gaining this power, he would wake up. Deku still wouldn't know how to use the power, or even what that was. But he would think that it was some sort of bone manipulation, seeing that, well, he has bone markings all over him, and he doesn't know what the red gas was, but the air, it feels denser. He'll figure it out soon, though. But Deku, well, he'd get up. He'd still be, well, fucked up, but he'd be good enough to walk to his room. As Deku would lay on his bed, as, well, it wasn't really a bed, it was just a cover with nails all over the room. And every time Deku moved, he'd get stuck with the nail. And this was, well, Deku's room. He laid down on his makeshift bed, and he tried to go to sleep, but his peaceful slumber would be interrupted by the sound of his parents arguing over what they should beat him with next. Deku was scared. He was trembling. Deku, he hated them, and they hated him right back. But Deku actually had a reason. Instead of hating him, they should hate the bastard that killed his sister, not him. He didn't do anything. Why the fuck am I still here? They're really arguing over what they're gonna do to me next. What the fuck is the point? Why? Why? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy how ignorant humans can be. I'd pick death. I'd pick death over any of this. Any of this shit that's going on. First Momo and Bakugo together. I loved her. I loved her so much. Every time I saw her, she brightened my day. She made me feel at least 50 times better. But now she's with that bastard. I trusted him. And this is how he repays me? As Deku's hands, they would start to form, well, large bone spears all over them. As Deku would grow in anger. As his room, it would be filled with this gas. And Deku didn't know what it was, but for some reason it calmed him down. Unknowingly, Deku used his, well, second power. It's basically gas manipulation. He can manipulate any form of gas, basically. And inadvertently, he used it to calm himself down, seeing that he didn't really want to destroy his only room. Plus, his parents might kill him if he did. And he means this literally. His parents probably would actually murder him for destroying his room. But, yeah. Deku would start to try to use his bone manipulation, and he'd get the hang of it. He'd also try to use his bone manipulation while using his, well, wind breathing quirk, and this actually formed a devastating combo. Instead of, well, just having mediocre winds, it's like his wind was boosted at least tenfold. Deku could blow a bone towards you and it'd fly at you at damn near Mach 20. As Deku'd say, uh, is this the power? Why do I have this? Who's responsible for me having this? As Deku think to himself, you know what? It doesn't matter. Maybe if I leave now, my parents they won't notice. Plus, I pretty much already have an appearance change. As Deku's hair, well, it used to be green. Now it's black and his eyes are red. As nobody would notice him if they saw him. Unless he told, well, them who they, unless he told them who he was. But Deku wasn't planning on it. He wasn't planning on revealing his true identity to anybody. Not at the time, or, well, pretty much ever. Unless they were really trustworthy. But Deku didn't care. He still may not have done it. But, yeah. Deku would have left his house and he'd have snuck out through the window. Deku would have been hopping from rooftop to rooftop until he got to the forest, where he would have made a little home for himself out of wood and leaves and other things that he found in the forest, making a fucking tent of sorts with his resourceful ass. But yeah, Deku would begin his training the next morning, and this would go on to last for why not 2 years? Yeah, 2. No, 3 years. Deku's 14, 17. Yeah, we'll make a UA middle. No, a UA high and a UA college, and we're gonna say the teachers transfer. All right, yeah. So Deku would be 17, and he damn near would have completed his training. And all of this time, Deku would have fought bears and mountain lions. He'd have trained in the fighting style of, well, I'll give him the fighting style of a snake. That's odd. I gave him a fighting style of an animal with no bones at all. Now what? It doesn't matter. Deku would have the fighting style of the snake that would use quick and precise strikes to kill or neutralize your opponent as fast and as quick as possible. As Deku would be content with this fighting style, as he'd have picked it up from a scroll that he would have went into town to get, seeing that, well, Deku would have been a pretty decent bounty hunter, and he'd have made himself a little bit of money. And at this point, Deku was planning to go back into town, but this time he was gonna stay. Deku was gonna buy himself a house and, well, at least try to go back to UA. As he'd do this, and he would be walking. He'd pass multiple people that he knew, but he didn't say anything. Is once Deku got into, well, Aizawa's class, he would see Deku, and he'd say, "Excuse me, who are you?" I'm Izuku Midoriya." As Deku would give him a smile, Aizawa would have wide-eyed. That nigga's eyes would have shot open. You nigga, you said you're who? Izuku Midoriya. As Deku would have shot him a smile again, as Aizawa would have ran up to him and hugged him. "You've been gone. Problem child. It just wasn't the same without you. I mean, of course I had the rest of these shitheads, like, Icy Hot, the emo one, and the explosive asshole, but I mean, they weren't as good as you. As Aizawa would, well, he'd be confessing to Izuku basically. He's his favorite student, and Deku would have laughed at this, and he'd have said, well, you're damn near my favorite teacher. As Deku would have, well, released the hug with Aizawa, and Aizawa would have said, where have you been? For the last, well, 3 years. Me? Well, I've been training, and I've come to accept some things. What are you talking about? I've come to accept my life. Hell will always be hell. Wait, what? Hell? What could you have possibly been through that made your life hell? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, I'll show you. As Deku would take off his shirt, as Aizawa would see scars and tons of scars all over Deku's body. There were so many scars that they started to pile up on each other. They would basically erode Deku's skin. His Aizawa would damn near throw up. But Deku would put his shirt back on and he'd say, now do you see? Now do you see why I left? I did this to myself along with my parents. They beat the shit out of me and I sat there and took it. Like a little bitch. This Deku would hold out his wrist and say, I tried to commit suicide so many times. So many different fucking attempts. Yet they always failed. And I wondered why. It was because of my bones. My bones, they would repair my skin. I don't know how, but they did it quick. But that leads me to my next realization. Or, well, my abilities. I was, well, thinking to myself that I had a quirk. Well, seeing that I would have small stubs of bone coming out of my hand. As Aizawa would have been shocked at this because Deku, well, he'd have only been able to use his mediocre wind blasts. As this is what Aizawa would have said to him, as Deku would have laughed and said, well, I can do more than those mediocre wind blasts now, Aizawa. See, look. As Deku would look at a desk as he would barely breathe and it would go flying out the window. His Aizawa would say, what the hell? But before they could continue their conversation, the rest of the class would walk in as they'd see, well, Izuku. And nobody knew who he was. They'd say, hey, Mr. Aizawa, we have a new student or something? Bakugo would say, well, it doesn't matter. He's just as weak as the rest of you. As he would have hugged Momo tight. As he would have said, isn't that right, baby? Deku would have seen that Momo has changed drastically. She's more arrogant and self-assured. She's starting to become like Bakugo. She's losing her caring personality. As she would have looked at Bakugo square in the face and kissed him and said, hell yeah. That sure is right, baby. These losers can't compare to us. As Deku would have said, Momo, what happened to you? As Bakugo would have, well, taken offense to this, as he'd have said, hey, shithead, don't talk to my girl like that. But Deku, oh, young Deku, he's been through a lot of changes. As before Aizawa could say, settle down. A bone. It would pop out right between Deku's middle finger and ring finger. He'd have a psychotic look in his eye as he'd walk right over to Bakugo and say it again, please. I dare you. As this time Momo would have said, hey, just calm down. It's not like you can really do anything about it. My baby's the strongest one in the world. As Bakugo would have said, damn right I am, but before, and I do mean before he could have said anything else, Deku would have smiled, laughed, and stuck his bone straight through Bakugo's stomach. And he would have tore Bakugo's stomach completely apart. Deku would have laughed psychotically as he'd have said, look at you. I thought you were strong. Momo, you vouched for him. He was strong, wasn't he? Wasn't he? No, say it, Momo. Say it! As Momo would be scared and all of Class 1A would be screaming. As Deku would say, what are you guys yelling so loud for? It's not like, well, anybody's coming to save you guys. As they would all look around the room and they'd see bones and tons of bones. As Aizawa would say, Deku, what is this? Oh, it's one of my mini abilities. It's called sound depletion, to be more exact. As Deku would have said, I'm sorry guys, if it sounds like I'm sounding weird, it's kind of like I'm pretty fucked up today, no cap. But yeah, let's continue this shit. Deku would have said it's sound depletion, and well, it's there to block out the sounds of screams. As Class 1A would have heard this and they would have stopped screaming, seeing that there was no point. Deku would have said, well, now then, Aizawa, I do believe that you have something to tell everybody. As Aizawa would have said, yeah. Class, I would like to introduce you to the new Izuku Midoriya. As Deku would have taken a bow and said, nice to meet you. I am Izuku Midoriya. My goal? Well, to kill my parents and to set this world right once and for all. But guys, I'll be leaving it off here. Make sure you guys have a blessed night, and yeah. Oh, and spam. I want you to spam this in the comments. If you guys think that the what if was absolutely trash, I'll redo it. And if you do think it was garbage, spam F's in the chat. F's in the chat. But yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye.